Welcome to Career for Doctors. My name is Ranjana Khan. In this webinar today, we are going to talk about consultant interview preparation. We'll be going through some of the things that you need to know or avoid, and how can you give structure to your answer. So, are you ready for your consultant interview? We'll be covering few things today, as I said. Why candidates fail? Strong candidates fail sometimes because they have not thought about their interview preparation. They don't see the common pitfalls, and then they don't know, as a result, how to avoid them. We'll be looking at creating powerful responses using the frameworks that we use. Some of them you may be aware of them, like CAMP, but we'll be covering why the PE in the CAMP is important and why it's important and where should you use it. Then we'll also be looking at how you can impress the panel, how to wow the panel. What is it that they are looking for? What is it that they get attracted to a candidate responses? What makes a response good response? And we'll be covering these today. Before we go into further, the interviews are not about showcasing your clinical knowledge. Everybody that's invited to an interview has those competencies in their clinical job. Everybody can manage the clinical situation scenarios that are required in their day in, day out job. So everyone can handle this or that. But consultant interviews are also about other skills, the peripheral skills that we call them. These are about leadership, the team working. Can you work within the system, within the finite resources that we have? Would you be able to come out with best outcome with limited resources? And are you confident enough to deal with different kind of scenarios? And would you be someone who would contribute to the service taking forward? But candidates make this mistakes. Sometimes they don't take interview like what it should be. They think it's like a knowledge test. So they want to read here, they read there, they do the Google searches. Sometimes these searches are very meaningless because you may know about everything about the topic. But in an interview, you need to be demonstrating that you have knowledge of this, and this knowledge will be useful in this situation. So you need to put those topics that you have learned so much into your answers. So clinical governance is something that I'm very passionate about. And they've got loads of pillars, but then how do you bring them into your answer? So mistake question is an example, or even the leadership question. You need to keep the service safe. So what is important? You need to know about clinical governance, as simple as that. But sometimes other mistakes they also make. The candidates, the mistake is that they don't focus. They feel like I need to answer the question, but it's not about just answering the question. It's about answering the question correctly. You need to answer the question, but you need to put lots of cherries on that cake so that it looks very delicious and yummy. Candidates start speaking as soon as the panel has stopped answering the question. They don't invest time in thinking. They haven't developed that skill to think what they're going to say, and they start speaking, and that can cost them the interview because they didn't get their thoughts organized in a proper way. They didn't know what this question was about, what framework will give it a structure, or how to structure a response to this question. Some questions are easy, some are not so easy. Some questions are straightforward, tell me about a mistake, but the same question can be asked in a different way. Could you tell us about when you learned something new? Well, you could use the mistake example, or you could use a teaching session that you did, or a quality improvement. So floor is open for you to choose. But then how do you choose what to use in situation? That comes with practice. And lots of time, people start preparing for the interview, not when they started applying or within the 6 months of their application, but when their interview invite comes in. So people apply quickly, and especially with the NHS job site, once you've done the application, all you have to do is tweak if you want to. Otherwise, just put that in my job basket, apply, submit, and it's done. That technique also results in poor interview shortlisting. So, but we'll cover that at some other time. One mistake that I usually come across, and most of my clients that have failed number of interviews and come to me after doing the shopping around different interview providers is that they say, well, I knew about it, what I was going to say, but when I was giving my answer, I was told I didn't have a structure, I was fumbling, I was waffling a lot, and that comes because people don't practice. And practice doesn't mean thinking about the answer, it's about talking about the answer. So you need to verbalize what you're going to say in your answers. So we'll look at some of the reasons why candidates underperform, and we know it that the candidates underperform because they don't create powerful responses, they don't know how to structure the response, they waffle a lot. Now, if they fail to understand the job, what the job is required, what is expected of them, what do are they the trust are looking for, clearly you're not going to give a good answer, are you? Because you don't know what is expected. It's like going to the climb Everest but not being ready to climb a molehill. So you have to read the job description. What are they looking for? If they are looking for a neurosurgeon and your experience all comes out as a colorectal surgeon, you are not going to be a good match for them. If they want someone who is very passionate about teaching and you haven't done any teaching, or you don't sell that part in your interview, you're not going to get the job. So you need to read the job description and the person's specification. This is very important. You need to have and demonstrate that you have done it. Without this, if you have a limited knowledge of just reading or without understanding the specific consultant job description, then you're not going to put your best foot forward, you're not going to shine yourself in those skills. So you won't be able to demonstrate the awareness of what the trust is looking for, what do they want, which way they want to progress, what are their key skills they are looking for in the new appointee, and the challenges, if you don't know what challenges they are there facing, which is there in the job description or in your search when you do your due diligence on the trust. In that case, that's a recipe for disaster because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. You won't be able to put these things into your answers, and obviously you will come across as someone who is struggling to know about the trust. So communicate. If you don't know what's wrong, you can't improve. So you need to know the trust strategies, values, challenges they are facing, and the vision for forward planning. Then you need to align your skills to their needs, look what the service is needing, so that there is a match, good match, and a good match or a good marriage is successful when both things are compatible. The trust head is looking for something, you have those something, so it's going to be a good union. If you can demonstrate that, then you are not risking a poor fit with the departmental needs and the trust culture because you have the insight into how the post sits within the wider organization. If you can demonstrate that, you are going to be successful. So your response, in nutshell, must demonstrate and link your core skill, your values, to the trust vision and challenges. The job description, you need to understand and read between the lines because what they say could be different than what they mean. So when you read the job description, understand the deep meaning and decode this. You need to show that you have stepped up, meaning provide clinical leadership. You're not a registrar anymore. You can think beyond that role. If they feel, if the job description shows that they're looking for someone to demonstrate or have the ability to influence others, again, this means, do you have the leadership skills? Can you demonstrate that you have your leadership skill in your answers? So this way, when you decode the job description, you would be better successful. So when you're answering your question, make sure you highlight your leadership related phrases. You understand when you're reading it, you highlight whether it's digital or printed, then map your experiences or your specific examples to each one. So if they're talking about leadership, think in what situation you demonstrated leadership. Was it that planning a teaching activity or doing a quality improvement project or improving or setting up a new service? Then show it, frame it with an impact, not on the activity. I set up the clinic doesn't mean anything. I set up a clinic so we could reduce the waiting list time. That's a good answer. That is what they are looking for, and that would add value to yourself. So turn these job description phrases into leadership examples. And you can do that. You can use the service innovation, you can talk about quality improvement project, and then again, talk in numbers. Don't say, I reduced the AE referrals. That doesn't mean anything. Did it reduce by one, so it doesn't make a difference? Or did it reduce significantly? And what happened as a result? So the AE referrals reduced, which means the patient flow improves, which means the length of stay was reduced because less patients were coming in. So bad occupancy was not 90%, but it was 80%. I know it's very hard to get this kind of data, but your service manager, whichever department, whichever specialty you are in, should be able to give you that kind of data. Because once you've done QIP, it has had positive impact, but you need some core values, and you will be able to get them. All you have to do is just drop an email. The other mistake candidates do, as we talked about, that they don't organize their thoughts. It becomes a waffle. It's very hard for panel to understand what they are saying. The narration is very chaotic. When your answers lack a clinical, when your answer lacks a clear structure, then making a message, whatever you are saying, it becomes very hard to follow. And when that happens, the panel loses interest. If you jump between points without a logical sequence, you talk about A, then go to X, then go to C, then go to Y, it becomes, you don't know what you want to say. It doesn't have a logistical process. It doesn't link one to other. And as a result, you fail to impress the panel. If you use the right framework, if you recognize what the question is about and use the right framework, then you will be able to minimize this waffle. You'll be able to organize your thoughts, and that risk that happen as a result of this, you would be able to get over that. So always think before you speak. Solution to that, obviously, know what you want to say. You organize the clinical domains that the consultants usually are tested on for in the interview. These could be obviously the clinical excellence, but you have your CCT. Your department will still want to check that you have those skills, and there would be one or two questions. And if you have prepared well, if you have your CCT, if you have worked through your training, those questions are easy. In fact, these are the easiest questions you can come across in your interview. But then the other questions that come across is that you have to go through the leadership questions, the management, quality improvement project, teaching, research, governance, NHS burning topic or hot topic as people call them. So organize these domains. Think about the examples you could demonstrate these skills. Now, I don't suggest that you have one example for each of these domains or skills. I would say have few examples, 2 or 3 examples max, but each example you could highlight. This example I will be able to use in my teaching as well as leadership and improving that aspect. So improving patient satisfaction because doctors are well trained. So patient satisfaction is better because doctors can communicate. So think about this. Important thing is when you use a specific example, the focus should be on the question that is being asked. So if they say, tell us about a time you demonstrated leadership and you use a teaching example, in that case, there's no point talking about teaching activity you did and the feedback you did, but you need to be talking about the leadership. That was the phrase. I showed my leadership by identifying that people coming to my service or my rotation or the staff didn't have that skill. I organized. So that is your leadership. You identified a problem, you acted on it, and you put steps in measures so that problem becomes a thing of past. And then you talk about measurable impact and the result. And don't forget the reflection. And that completes your answer. Now, when you're giving examples, make sure that you have thought about these things. You're thinking what you're going to say in the examples, and that will come in the following framework. You need to, every example, whichever framework you use, you need to have an introduction, which is literally like just paraphrasing the question and setting the scene really. And then you have a body of the response where your main thing that you're going to say. You're going to signpost them. You're going to include two or three pointers, two or three key points in that specific areas. For example, in the teaching example, identifying solution, putting that solution in place, and then what happened afterwards. So those are the two or three points that would make your answer memorable. And once you've done the body of the response, then you need to talk about or end it up with a powerful summary. Don't allow a cliffhanger approach. A cliffhanger approach basically, yeah, that's what I did. Oh, that's my response. Those kind of response don't leave the panel saying, oh God, you don't know what you want to say. In the summary, when you're finishing your answer, not only you sum up what you have said in one, max two line, but you link that with your key skills. Once you do that, once you've said, so I demonstrated leadership skills, or I demonstrated great communication or empathy for the patient or team working, it shows that you are not just giving an example, you're thinking about how would you use this for a better work relationship. You will maintain a cordial relationship. Your relationship is not going to break apart, but it will contribute to patient care. And that's what the panel wants. Sometimes candidates feel that I freeze, I don't know what to say, I'm thinking, and that thinking process becomes very long, and the long pauses lead to failure. As a result, when I start speaking, I'm waffling. Obviously, if you have noted that, if you have demonstrated there's noticeable difficulty in responding when you are faced with the challenging questions, or you are faced with a probing question, then long pauses and loss of structure or lack of structure can lead to incomplete or unfocused answers, and that's something you don't want. Sometimes after one curveball question, what happens is that you perform very badly in that question, but then you didn't recover from it. So basically, you're still thinking, oh my God, I did bad in this question and I'm not going to get the job. But it affects your next question and the one after that. As a result, your performance deteriorates continuously throughout the interview. Once if you've had a one question that you didn't answer, so what? That's not end of the interview. Maybe everybody would do the same. Problem is everybody will find that question difficult. So you don't need to worry about it. Move on to the next question without pondering over, without just having that thought, letting it affect your next question. So after one poor performance in your question, don't let this affect your rest of the interview. One bad question doesn't make a huge difference because possibly everybody will have the same thing. Don't go into that negative spiral saying, I'm not going to get the job, because if you do that, you will not get the job. Other times, people feel that if they're raising a concern, if they are not able to communicate, they are not able to make timely decisions. If you demonstrate that you are not able to raise any concerns in any situation, you are delaying decision making or not making decisions at all in high pressure clinical leadership situation. That's not going to get you or leave a good impression on the panel. So always make sure that you come across someone who will know what to do, what to say, when to say, how to say, and make those timely decisions. So practice mock interviews under timed condition. I usually say, keep your phone handy, put the timer on, or go on to the online stopwatches, turn the stopwatch on when you start speaking, and then practice. So you know how much time you take. If you take 4 minutes or 5 minutes, that's too long. If you finish in 1 minute time, that's too short. You need to get that balance right where you answer without waffling, but communicate the key messages there. You can use anchor phrases like, there are 2 key points here, or the key points here is 1 or 2, and go into that. I usually actually say, don't say 2 or 4. And there are 4 situations or 5 examples or 5 times, because you will forget one and then the panel will wonder why did you say 5 when you gave only 3. But 2 is easy to remember, so you can say, so use those anchor phrases. Something like that. If I take that in order, I'll start with what happened, then what I did, and what was the result. That way, you have set the scene. You're going to tell them. It's like opening a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, then tell them, and then summarize what I did. That way, it has a good structure. Always prepare short anchor phrases to regain mid-interview focus. If you have had a curveball question you didn't do very well, always come back to where you were before you go into the negative and do that. I'm yet to come across someone, but there was a situation when someone had to go through a counseling, therapy lessons, or speaking lessons just to build up that confidence as a result. It usually happens when people have had multiple failures. So with proper preparation, planning, and practice, you will be able to minimize that risk. You don't need to sell yourself. People say, "Oh, I need to have a unique selling point, so I can sell myself." Well, yes, you should have something that can make you shine, but you're not doing your selling. You're saying, "Hire me because I'm the best," and then you tell them why you're the best. You need to describe uh, what your experience is, but more than that, you need to demonstrate that you have those skills and experiences. If you just say, "Well, I am an expert in this," but you need to tell them how you are an expert. You possibly are the one of a kind. You have developed this technique nobody does. You teach them. Your outcomes are results are very good. So give them what it is. There's no point saying, "I have done this, this, this," without backing it up with evidence. You can say, "I have played this role," but then if that role links badly to the consultant role, so you could be a rota coordinator, but if you don't link it to the consultant job, if consultants are responsible for supervision, making sure that the on-call cells are completely filled, then in that case, that you are going to be successful. But without saying I'm a rota, just saying rota coordinator doesn't mean anything. Everybody says I've been a rota coordinator because everybody has been a rota coordinator at some point in their life, whether it's junior doctors or registrars or locum posts, etc. So don't struggle to link your past roles with your future roles as a consultant. Highlight your achievements, but link them to your specific requirement in the consultant job description that you have heard or what the service needs so that you perform better. Always talk about what you have done and what was its impact. Without that, your panel is not going to be impressed because they don't know if this work was done, what was its outcome. So don't underemphasize your contribution to the service, quality improvement, teaching, whatever activity you did, but emphasize it with results and outcomes. That will add value to yourself. If you show an activity and it has some values without any limited evidence of without any or with any limited evidence of your contribution or whatever you say is meaningless. So you need on outcomes or impact for patients, teams, or services so that it becomes useful. So people know what you have done and they can appreciate the full benefit of your experience. And if you've done and achieved something, you're likely to continue to do that in your new role, which is what you need to emphasize. Sometimes people feel that when they are giving examples, it's always clinical, whether it's a mistake or a teaching or leadership. People talk about teaching. Well, I taught people about how to do a cannula or ABG, but you could talk about something else. It's about the skills that you have rather than what you taught. And if all your examples are clinical, it shows that you don't have a life outside. You don't have the ability, skills, or competence to do other roles that you are required to do in your role as a consultant. So even when you are asked about, for example, situations of conflict and thinking about I manage diabetic ketoacidosis with medicine A versus medicine B by the other person, there was a conflict where clearly this is okay, this is a good example. People have different ways of treating different conditions, but is this an example of conflict or using the evidence-based medicine? So person A uses evidence-based medicine based on what they have versus person B using their evidence and knowledge they have to use this. Does it affect the patient outcome? If that doesn't affect them, then examples are not good. Also, you need to be thinking the situations outside of your clinical role because that we can show that even when you are in the thick soup, you will be able to get out and you will maintain cordial relationship. Consultant role is broader than clinical work. You have multiple dimensions. And if you use only clinical examples, it suggests that you have limited experience in leadership, management, teaching, research, etc. So, which are all core parts of your role. So, you missed an opportunity or a chance to show your strategic and system level thinking. You are not showing that you have made the transition from registrar to consultant. You're thinking like them. You need to demonstrate that you can think like the panel or people across the table who are going to decide about your future. So don't use clinical anecdotes in every example. Clinical anecdotes tend to focus on individual patient, but not on running a service or improving pathways or managing risk, working with managers or influencing changes across the department. Whereas if you talk about systemic changes, if you talk about the service and you use those examples, it shows a broader perspective by yourself. So risk of appearing one-dimensional is there if you use all your examples as clinical examples. Look at your CV. Think what is it in your CV for your non-clinical way. What was it that you did that make you shine in the specific department? What domain you can use, leadership, governance, teaching, whatever. Choose and make a list. Make drop-down menus like here the skill, here the example, example, skills. And you need 2 or 3. Once you've done few of these, you realize that one skill can demonstrate 2 or 3 personalities of your role that you have played and your confidence that you have gained. So learn and practice using these few examples to showcase different skills. That would be your task that you do today after you finish the seminar. Then most people will say, well, I ramble and lose focus. That is something I have come across many times, and many of us have gone through this problem. But you can reduce that by using the right framework. When you use the right framework, then you will be able to give a structure to your answer. And the framework that we use at Care for Doctors are the CAMP framework to answer CV-related question, INSIST or the SPICE framework, the I-STAR framework, and the 3 WHATS framework, which is for logistical thought processes. And this is very useful when you have a curveball question or when you don't know what you want to say. And the four quadrant approach, again, this is when you have no idea what is there, what to say, but then you can use the experience and a skill. But whatever you do, you must verbalize your answer. Don't think what you're going to say, but speak what you're going to say for a better impact and better structure. So now we're going to talk about how do you create powerful responses using the frameworks. And the framework are few that I have just mentioned. But response of this, the structure is very important. It keeps you tight. It avoids waffling. It enables authenticity and increases your confidence because you know what you're going to say, how you're going to say, and how you're going to end without a cliffhanger approach. It develops a better connection with the panel. It demonstrates a composer. You are confident. You're making eye contact. You're looking at the panel. You're answering the question. You're summarizing it, and you present the genuine person, what you really are. I'm demonstrating different attributes, a multifaceted personality that you need to show in your consultant role. When you're creating powerful responses, you need to lead with the headline and the benefit. So always start with the introduction, body, and summary, the IBS. Introduce the concept, which is literally paraphrasing the question. Open with a one-liner that states your role, the action, the patient service, or impact. In the main body, you are anchoring, using your anchoring phrase, and always link it with the NHS or the trust or service priorities. I'm giving an example. You can include that in your body as long as you don't waffle and don't talk about how and about the whys and don't tell the stories. You just take focus. I led the redesign of our rapid access pathway versus when you say, well, there was problems within department, there were nobody, guidelines were not followed, there were lots of complaints, the audit shows that we were underperforming. So I did this quality improvement project to redesign. By the time you have actually come to what you want to say, there's been a lot of waffle, and the panel possibly lost their interest because they usually lose that after 15 to 30 seconds. So you need to catch their attention. They need to know what you're going to say next after your key phrase or the anchor phrase. And when you start your body of the answer after the anchor phrase, make sure you signpost to specific domains. I developed this, I minimized this, the impact was this, I improved this, what was the financial aspect or improvement, if any, you are available. So domain use that you could showcase in your patient safety, quality, leadership, management, finances. You could talk about education or training. You could include equality, diversity, inclusion, depending on what the question is, about how you can use it. And then you need to show how your actions advance that priority. So if you're talking about patient safety, you talked about clinical governance, how that improved the incident reports reduced, if the patient feels that wrong drug administration was minimized, talk about that, what percentage that happened. And then you will be able to use the numbers to benchmark the baseline. If are you comparing what is happening across the board, across the region or service or nationally, and then how you made this sustainable. You need to reference appropriate guidelines, for example, NICE guidelines, curved RCT guidelines, whether there's a local sequence or the trust KPIs, whatever it is, showcase your work, highlight your skills to demonstrate that. Then when you're creating powerful responses, it's very important that you show that you have the systems, leadership, and risk awareness. You know that you can demonstrate you have the leadership skill and you are aware of the risk different situation can pose. Describe, for example, how you brought MDTs and partners together, like primary care organization, diagnostic, pathology, radiology, ICS. You anticipated risk and take actions that would minimize this risk. Use your governance knowledge. Use different roles that you played. Did you do the SOPs? Did you do the audit cycle? Identify, bridge the gaps, and how you balance that quality, how you manage an action that reduce or improvise patient safety, and talk about that. And gently weave in. Also, add a quick reflection. What I would do differently next time is this. So it shows that not only you did something, you introduced something, and then you developed a habit which you will continue to follow, and maybe other will follow because you lead by examples. Then always summarize it. When you summarize it, it's a skill, and you need to develop that skill. You need to summarize, but when you're summarizing, in your summary, gently integrate key topics or your key skills or the trust priorities or the challenges, or if you don't know about trust priorities or challenges, including NHS priorities or challenges, so that when you are saying something like, for example, when you finish an example with what you have learned, how would it improve, and how would that help the department making a win in that problem that they're facing? Obviously, they will like you. An example could be, if appointed, I'll apply this model to our weekend cover with run chart monitoring and a patient partnership on the QI group, which is better than saying, if I am appointed, I'll make sure that our on-calls have proper staffing. So you have included the buzzwords, you have included what you would be monitoring and how you would implement that. Going into the framework. So these are the framework we are going to talk today in brief. So CAMP, we all know, it gives you a clinical, academic, managerial, and P for person versus P for passion. That's a debate going on. Number of people come to me and say, what do you think? What shall we do? I'm confused. Which one I should use? Well, I am a proponent of P for, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But CAMP framework gives you a clear, logical way to talk through your career your suitability for different roles. It helps you cover the main domains of your consultant role. It showcases that you can organize your thoughts and communicate with a structure. When you're talking about your clinical role, don't just say, well, I have my competencies in this. Think about what you will be doing over a weekend and a week. What would you do Monday morning versus Thursday afternoon? When is your SPA time? Think about, would you be doing an inpatient work, outpatient work? Would you be doing X number of theaters, X number of clinics? Services, you would be on call. You might be providing specialist area cover. For example, as a diabetes endocrinologist, I'm expected to provide my input to a person with diabetes endocrine problem across a trust. So you have that role, and lots of time people forget. Do you cover any specialist areas like labor ward, SDAC ward, ambulatory care, research, trauma? Include all of that in your clinical work, and then move on to the academic work where you talk about your publication, research, any time that you did, any projects that you did. You move on to the management where you talk about any quality improvement, service improvement, changes, root cause analysis, serious adverse events, rules, and these. Then you move on to P, which is P for person or P for passion. But we'll come to that in a minute. The CAM framework, it is not just about your CV. You can use this framework in about why should we give you this job? Why do you want this job? Where do you see yourself in 5, 10, 20 years? Or where do you see your service in 5, 10, 20 years? So it is a very fluid, very specific way. So for example, if I were to say, where do I see my service in 5 years' time, I would be talking about my service would be having. So you phrase them, you gently change the phrasing depending on what you are answering. So in this question, in service change, in 5 years' time, I would be looking at my service being well equipped, well staffed by people who are experienced and expert in their specific area. I would also see that we'll be contributing to more research, we'll have more publications, abstracts, will be invited to conferences, prestigious conferences, maybe chairing the events, our staff members. Also, I would be seeing that our service is adapting the new technology using the state-of-art methods or following the guidelines, and it's becoming benchmark practice examples or best practice examples across the region, nation, or country. I also feel that service would have different roles, but here in this example, you can skip the P because that's not relevant. But if you're talking about yourself, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10, 20 years' time? You say, well, I would have settled in my role, possibly developing extra clinics, whatever, talk about your skills you could do, and then I possibly would be becoming a research magnet or investing time on research, developing a good research portfolio, contributing to high-class research coming out of our organization, becoming a central hub for the research. I would be contributing to, you get the drift. And then when you're talking about P, then you can talk about, and of course, I would have progressed further in my golfing lesson, or I would have done on more, be winning awards for photography, all those, whatever you do. So coming to the why P for person is important versus P for passion. Now people say if you demonstrate P for passion, if you start with, I'm passionate about my job, well, you wouldn't be doing this job if you're not passionate. You wouldn't even have gone to medical school if you're not passionate about medical care. If you didn't want to be a doctor, in that case, you wouldn't have gone. So P for passion doesn't communicate anything. In fact, sometimes I feel it is a repeat of what you may have said somewhere else. But so you need to avoid what has been said in your CAM, clinical, academic, and managerial section. You need to humanize yourself. You need to demonstrate that you are somebody who is outside 9 to 5 work. You have an approach. You are a human. You get stressed. You want to have some stress bursting. You need to recharge your batteries. You need before you turn up to your work. So you need to have something that makes you human, that makes you like the panel. They don't want to take their work to home unless they have to do some other activities. And recent times, when I get asked, I usually feel that when you're answering, you tell us about yourself, starting your question with P for passion could lead to a very rehearsed answer where you're talking same thing, but you are duplicating or repeating what you have said. My personal favorite is as well camp, where P is for personal. It's been around for a long time. People in the panel actually have gone through camp much more than different frameworks, the IMSO or whatever it is, where P for passion is early on, but then duplicating. And then you also, there is a danger you might forget some of the key part in your interview. More importantly, because the CAM framework has been established, the panel knows it. So when you are going through different domains, they are tick marking you. In fact, they might have actually written, I want to know what clinical work they have done. So tick done. My managerial written SOP, yeah, tick done. So you don't want to miss out, because if panel doesn't know the newer frameworks and they're marking you on camp, and then there is a domain that you haven't answered and you risk losing points. You need to recognize that being an effective consultant is not always about clinical excellence or academic excellence. It's also about maintaining professional well-being. You need to demonstrate the transferable skills, the personal activities that nurture these qualities like perseverance, teamwork, maintaining good relationship, professional integration, your problem-solving abilities, and all of this will enhance your professional performance. So if you can, for example, a person who does marathons will have to plan, they have to train, they have to persevere, and they have to finish. Same thing, what you would be doing when you start a quality improvement project. You need to plan, you need to persevere. When things go wrong, you have to bring them back on track like a marathon runner, and then you have to finish, so you need to produce results. So you would be able to use these transferable skills in your personal activities, personal roles, that are whatever, or choice, whatever you do. I would usually suggest don't bore them to death. There's no point saying, I'm father of two lovely kids, and I love them immensely. I go on cycling holidays with them. What you need to be focused is, in my personal life, I am a great, I take cycling holidays, which helps me de-bursting, stress bursting, and keep recharge my batteries. So when I come back to work, I'm able to restart again. You need to demonstrate this resilience and perseverance. You need to demonstrate that commitment to your personal growth and the ability to persist even when you're faced with challenge, which is a key skill for a consultant or in an NHS leadership role. You need to know that or demonstrate that you have stress management skills and abilities. You'll be able to handle this stress. You have your personal stress and activities that will distract you, that will recharge your battery so you're fresh. You're not going to mull over your mistakes or something that happened at work, even when you're at home having a coffee time with your wife or family or children, but you're still thinking about what happened at work. And that's not right. That would say that you don't have a life outside of your consultant, and you possibly will not be very successful because you fail to demonstrate your personality outside of your work. So you need to demonstrate these stress bursting mechanisms which will protect your mental and health, physical well-being, so that you are able to sustain high performance week after week in your role as a consultant. And of course, you have to be a role model by valuing your personal well-being. You are demonstrating that you are able to understand, recognize, you set an example to your colleagues and trainees, and that will foster a healthier and more supportive workplace culture. So on a personal level, I make time, for example, if you say something like that, I make time for long distance running. This has taught me perseverance and discipline. It also brings into my professional life and managing complex cases that require certain effort, sustained effort. Running also acts as a stress buster, which helps me maintain resilience and a balanced perspective. This is much better than showing I'm passionate about running at the start. And how do you correlate that at the beginning? They are not expecting you to be talking about your passion about your running or your passion about clinical skill, because clinical skill you won't be passionate, you won't be doing it. So P for passion possibly is a no-go as far as I'm concerned. So I think we have already covered that. You need to highlight, and it makes you look different when you use P for personal versus P for passion, because P for passion gets very boring. Everybody is saying, I'm passionate about clinical care or robotic surgery or on-call work. It's a no-go. And you need to share how you manage stress. Many candidates will have similar CV as yourself, but what you can do is how you can correlate your personal interest to keep thinking the panel that you are someone who is different, you have different skills. You would be able to bring these transferable skills into your day-to-day job. So it makes it easier for them to imagine you as a future colleague. Also, when you're talking about something you genuinely enjoy, it helps you relax in your interview. And remember, this question is asked in the first, usually the first or opening question. So the minute you feel relaxed, your body language changes. You are able to integrate. You can smile. You can make eye contact. It makes you look different. So always think how you're going to say things and then say it. In the interview, I think that's one of the predictable questions. You will be put on a spot you have when you have to deal with a situation. For example, a late arriving colleague or a drunk consultant, and they insist or the SPICE framework works. In this situation, whatever you do, you need to make sure that don't take the information given to you at face value. Make sure you do the fact-finding mission. You make sure that the information you are given is correct, not because the person who is giving you the information is biased against somebody else. So when you do that, in that case, after that, once that's done, you need to be putting patient safety high on card. So when dealing with a difficult colleague, it is important to remain structured and professional and keep patient and people safety high on card. Most of the time, we worry about people's patient safety, but we forget. Think about a matron who was brave enough to walk out of theater into somebody else and talk about a consultant who is drunk. Now, she has put herself on spot. Now, she's not worried, but that goes in the mind. Am I going to be called a whistleblower, or would I be labeled a troublemaker? So you need to think about her and support her in that process. You did what you needed to do. That was well done. And support them. Speak to them afterward. Tell them that if there's any issues, precautions will come back to you, or speak to freedom to speak guardian, or point them in the right direction. So when you do that, first of all, you will seek information, get the information right, prioritize patient safety, people's safety, and the well-being of other people involved in that situation. And then you need to interact with the person. It doesn't have to be done right then and there, but depending on the situation, if it's a drunk consultant, you say, "Hey, Mr. X, I think you are not in a right shape. Why don't you go home? We'll sort out the situation here. I'll arrange a taxi or transport for someone to take you home." In the interview settings, I'm yet to come across a situation where the consultant say, "I'm not drunk, how dare you?" So the panel will let you go through along this plan. But if that happens, in that case, you've switched yourself from situational question or dealing with difficult colleagues to a conflict situation. So you switch mode from the SPICE mode to the conflict mode. What would you do when you were in a situation of conflict? And answer, go along. And now you know that you either use the what so what or what's next approach versus you can use I-star approach. But let's continue with this difficult colleague scenario. So you need to interact the person. We've done that. Now what you need to do is you need to support the person. You need to find out why this happened, why a consultant or ex-person who is the responsible person follow good medical practice. He's in that situation, coming drunk, late coming, late arriving, taking long breaks, whatever it is. Find out what's going on, what has changed. And I usually say, think about 2 or 3 situations. Could it be the transport problem? Could it be sickness, finance problem, family issues, divorces, whatever? Just put 2 or 3 because that will help you identifying what you are going to do next. If it is a sickness issue, maybe they can go to occupational health, speak to the GP, take some time off. If it is they have too much work or the family issues or childcare issues, then think around that change of job plan. So once you know, once you have signposted what the problems are, then you will be able to put those things in the right context and give solution. And it's very important to do that, because once you do that, if you demonstrate, you can think outside the box, you can come up with problems, you can come think of why people behave differently, and then you can suggest solutions. It's no point saying I'll ask them to go and speak to HR in the first way. That shows that you lack empathy, you can't think what else could be wrong, because some of the problem could be very short, very easy to fix. But then in this situation, you don't want to be the one who is holding the bucket. You don't want to be the person who has not involved other team members. And involving team member doesn't mean that I will escalate to my clinical director. You could involve other team members saying, I would like to keep them informed. I could discuss with my colleagues so that we know. Remember, you may be the first time you were contacted, but it could be somebody else was contacted, more so when junior doctors. So you need to let the supervisor know if it is a trainee, but if it is a consultant, you speak to other consultant and they may have come across the same situation, which shows that there is a pattern, which means the behavior is persistent, perseverant, and then more action needs to be done. And that's the time when you speak to service line lead or clinical director. So you need to monitor the situation, and if need be, then you escalate further. So this approach will ensure that you handle the situation with maturity, fairly, safely, and follow the trust values and NHS values. The I-STAR framework. In your interview, you'll be asked questions where you need to give examples. These questions are very easy to spot. You will be hearing something like, tell me about a time, give me an example, show me when you demonstrated. This means you have to give an example. And this is where the I-STAR framework goes. I is for introduce the concept. The list of examples to think of is added to your resource panels. When you go, there's a list that you can document. If you are watching this webinar, you can just drop that in the comment or email us, and then we will drop you that list as well. It's very useful to prepare these examples in advance, because then you can think of what question I'm going to answer. But as I said, you don't need to have 20 examples of different situations. You can easily use a few examples in different situations. So it's very useful when you have this list. Then try to prepare these examples and develop your own script. Try not to rote learn it. Try not to cram it, but develop your own style. And that will come when you practice using the I-STAR framework. In the I-STAR framework, what we're talking about is introducing the concept, where you just do the one-liner, where you are paraphrasing the question, or introducing, I led an initiative to improve patient safety by addressing missed VTE risk assessment. Then you set the scene by talking about a situation when I was in the ward, there were an audit removed that VTE assessments were incomplete, or we got an email from the trust safety committee that we were not performing VTE as adequately. So then explain the task, where you are saying, as a senior registrar, I was responsible for patient safety and protocol compliance. It was my role. I did that. So then you talk about the action. What was it that you did? And again, talk just one or two lines. I introduced daily checks, educated juniors. When I was doing the war run, I'll make sure that the VTE form was either completed or the tick on the electronic patient record was done. This way, I was able to demonstrate that all components were performed, and then show the result. What was the result? What happened? Try to use numbers, because without saying I improved the VTE compliance is meaningless, versus as a result of my action, the VTE compliance improved by 30%, which is much better. And also be specific with times. 30% improvement over 2 years versus 30% improvement in 2 months is much better. And then always talk what was the learning that you do, what would you do differently, what would you ensure that everybody did. So I learned the value of simple sustainable intervention. Next time I would involve nursing staff earlier to share responsibilities, or next time I would do this differently. That way you show that you have developed an approach to resolve the issues. Our new unique framework, this is the unique framework that Career for Doctors teaches you. This is the three what's framework, which is what, so what, and what's next. The framework is a reflective framework and is an evaluative tool. It helps you think logically to structure your responses. It helps you demonstrate a critical thinking, reflection, and help you in forward planning. Depending on the question, you may end up using the I-STAR framework to narrate your answer, but this framework gets your thoughts in order, which you would be able to use in a curveball question when you are stuck on what to say. So here, the what is describing the situation. This is the descriptive phase. This is where you use what actually happening. Remember, 2-3 minutes is the time you have to think. So don't go through a long, detailed, long artist exam, long, detailed waffle about what was the situation. You need to avoid these stories. So think about the context, outline the fact, and give specifics. And then go on to so what. This is the analytical phase. Here you are analyzing the significance of the situation. You are identifying the impact, which could be positive or which could be negative. You are highlighting lessons or the insights gained as a result of doing or not doing something. So, for example, if you say, this experience highlighted the need for clear communication in complex case planning, then you go to what's next approach, which is the action-oriented stage. Here you're describing what would you do, what action would you do, or what would you plan, and then you are demonstrating your senior level thinking, your consultant level thinking. You're demonstrating that you can think like what the panel thinks. You are offering solutions, you are talking about forward planning, you are giving some improvement ideas, or you are improving ideas. So the 3 what approach is very useful. It is a framework that you can use for quality improvement initiatives. You can talk about conflict relationship, adverse events or complaints, daily situations, or even demonstrating leadership and impact analysis consultant roles. This is very good approach when you need to, when you have a curveball question. Remember, once you got your thought process organized, you may have to use the right framework to answer that question, which could be SPICE, INSIST, or I-STAR. The other unique framework that we are very proud of is the 4-quadrant approach. Sometimes you are given a question where you have to give different opinions. What would you do if you were given £1 million, and how would you invest it? Would you choose a staff or would you choose a new building? Now you have to think about what is it? What do I know? So the 4-quadrant, or when you have to give different opinions, the pros and cons of this or that, it could be again in a difficult situation, but this is a situation where the 4-quadrant approach gets you to think about what you can do in what situation. So you can use the 4-quadrant approach for pretty much all of the opinion scenarios. When you have to give your opinion about it, should doctors go on a strike? Is it legal for doctors to go on a strike? Well, then you can do that. Again, the competency questions, you could use that in your interview. Anything that's not a simple factual recall situation or a situational question, because in those situations you'll be using the I-STAR framework. And a quick way, and also when you have a curveball question, in the 4-quadrant approach is simple. First, you start thinking, what is it? What qualities that I have that I can demonstrate? Think about 2 or 3 things that you need to demonstrate beyond clinical competencies, because you have to have clinical competency, without which you won't be invited for interview. So think about what domain are you going to show? Patient safety, patient centeredness, staff well-being, leadership, team working, whichever. Choose whichever. And then what experience? Do you have that experience? How can you narrate that in your experience. So pick a specific example, demonstrate, describe clearly what would you do in that particular situation. And then knowledge, anchor your answers in guidance, policies, use the GMC, good medical practice, good research framework, ref, guidelines from any source, the NICE guidelines, the Royal College guidelines, or the new technology research method, or the best practice examples, or even to using your own anecdote, but then relating it with hard data. Once you have done these three, you need to give a balanced answers. What you see, show that you see the other aspects. You should have the other perspectives. You are aware of the risk, limitations, and the benefits. Give the pros and cons of doing this or not doing this, or impact of this um, or not doing impact of that. And that way, you'll be able to give a smooth narratives. So if you were asked, what would you do if you were given X amount of money to choose, you could talk about, if I chose the building, yes, it would be good environment, good staff well-being, but having a theater or state-of-art robotic technology would help me getting my patients out, better recovery, quick recovery, less length of stay, will be following the sequence, and things like that. And that way, you have not only included what you wanted to say, give pros and cons, and then give a balanced answer. The new technology or a theater would help patients' life. So maybe I would choose this versus this. You shouldn't try not to sit on the fence. So when you're using the framework, you need to be able to identify the right framework. You need to be specific, provide clear examples and details, and you need to be very honest, acknowledge the challenges and the solutions. Demonstrate your leadership. You demonstrate, showcase your skills that you have, showcase the responsibilities and initiatives that you have taken, because that makes you someone who has done something in the past will be able to do in future, and highlight the impact, emphasize the positive outcomes. So then we'll talk about how to impress the panel. You need to demonstrate the NHS values in action throughout your interview. Keep your focus on patient safety, compassion, and NHS values or the trust values. You need to remain professional. You need to demonstrate your personal attributes in the interview. You need to have a collaborative, respectful approach. And you need to demonstrate that you are someone people can trust. You are supportive. You will be an active listener and provide a guidance. You need to show your value through your practical behavior and examples. Leadership is not always about formal roles. I am a clinical director, so I'm a leader. That's not the right way. Everybody demonstrates leadership, and you need to demonstrate in your interview using day-to-day examples of your life. You need to demonstrate that you're resilient, you can handle stress because you have good stress busting mechanisms. You are accountable. You're not going to, when things go pear-shaped, you're not going to put blame on somebody else. You will take ownership. You are accountable for your action. You have a matured approach, and you have the ability to influence outcomes. You will take remedial actions to spot and act on something when things are not right. Above all, you will be a professional throughout. You will be able to balance details with efficiency. So while you're trying to get the details right, you're not delaying the project. You will remain on topic. You will not digress, and then you will avoid overcomplication. There's no point. Keep things simple. And if you can do that in the interview, you are going to impress them. Other thing that you need to think is you need to think like them. You need to demonstrate what the panel is looking for. You need to demonstrate that leadership potential that you have. You need to show them you've already done that and you're going to do it again given the situation. Give a solution. Don't just say, well, this is the problem. Anybody who says, I have a problem, should come up with a solution. So give solutions, make sure that when they are looking for someone who is able to take the service forward, you have to present, you have the ability, you will be able to keep the department together and take it forward so that you can generate revenue, add values to yourself, to the trust, which will attract more staff, which means there'll be lots of people doing the work, which means less stressful for people. It's going to be a happy environment because you took the right steps. So your due diligence, which if you have done, will give you lots of information about the trust information, trust values, trust challenges, which you can use and take the interviews to the next level. And obviously, showing that you are like them, you think like them, you speak with authority, you speak with confidence, you giving NHS specific examples, you are showing leadership at every drop of the head will make you start liking them. You need to give a structure to your responses. Your response should not be full of waffle. You go here and then come back and then go somewhere else. You need to have a concise, clear, and confident response that aligns with the trust values so they can think you are a right person. And when you're delivering a response, avoid the cliffhanger approach. We talked about the introduction, body, and summary. Highlight your skills using the USPs or the skills you have, the experience you have, or talk about the key issues relevant to the service department or the trust or the NHS as such in general. You need to present yourself like a professional, so dress the part, have good body language, sit upright, make eye contact, smile, and that makes good. That makes you look good. You arrive early, so you're not scuffling to work. Oh my God, where is the interview? Where is the trust board office? And all sorts of things. Your PowerPoint is on a USB, that doesn't work. So be prepared, be courteous, show a calm, confident, collaborative behavior. Act like the consultant you want to be. So you need to use power phrases and templates. You need to do a quick self-check before you stop talking. Think about when you're talking about your answer, think about, did I state a decision? Did I make my point clear? Did I name the benefits to patients or staff? Did I give a specific matrix that will help us deciding did we achieve that? And did I include sustainability in my answer? And if you could say that, why did I do it? How did I do it? How do I know it's going to improve? And how would it continue to work if I was removed from the equation? That will make an impactful answer. You need to have a perfect response ending. You need to signpost the benefits, use the keywords. So link your actions to patient outcomes, staff well-being, safety, the trust values, then you have a winning answer. Use the keywords, use the seamless integration of current affairs, NICE, CQC, curve, whatever is current, include them. If there was an NHS news in the media or a TV program or BBC Panorama, talk about it. But don't talk about the program, just signpost to it. So as BBC Panorama highlight the high maternal mortality rates, I would propose that we do. So it shows that you're aware of it, there is a problem, and you have a plan to improve that, which means you'll be able to keep your maternal mortality very low in your department. So also integrate what's been happening. So think about the NHS 10-year plan. Demonstrate that you're compassionate, collaborative, inclusive, and resources aware. We don't have £1 million for everyone. We don't. The money is not in the surplus. We have to keep thinking about money, manpower, material resources, so that we are able to keep our work with minimal resources for maximum benefit. And if you could demonstrate that, you know it that the trust you're thinking, this doctor will help me or my finances staying within green, not go red. So quick do's for your interview is finish with patient benefit, quote how you'll measure, name who you'll engage, and promise a follow through. So make it sustainable. Don't just end on processes only. I will do this. Doesn't make any sense. Is that going to improve patient outcome? Is that going to improve the numbers, the finances? Talk about them. Don't make vague claims. You should be able to justify, you should be able to defend your claims with backup, with your answers, with numbers. And don't aim for personal gain. This will help me getting the CA point that I have always tried but didn't gain by this project. That's not the kind of answer they want to hear or you want to say in your interview. Never ever criticize previous, past, or current employer. In my current job, whatever I do, I was criticized for not being engaged. It's not a no go. It's something you should not say in your interview. So some examples of power phrases are like anything. I will turn this into routine practice through audit feedback, quality improvement hurdles, and shared learning is better than saying I've introduced this quality improvement project which improved this. What you're talking about is making it sustainable. So create your own power phrases. If you want some help, you can always email us or contact Career for Doctors and we'll be able to guide you. You can write in the comments and we'll be able to send you a list of some power phrases that will help you in finishing your answer. You should be able to define your consultant identity. So, in a nutshell, throughout your interview, you need to be highlighting your unique, specific points that are very unique to yourself. You should be highlighting your achievement. You should be confident in delivering what you offer, articulate your strengths, deliver your answer with conciseness, clarity, and with confidence. You should be reflecting on your leadership role and emphasize the contribution to the service development and how would that contribute? Would that be improving patient safety, friends and family awareness? Would be the impact? Give those specific measurable outcomes that will make you shine. Showcase your abilities other than clinical work or managerial work. Remember, we are doctors. We have to teach as well. We have to create the next generation of doctors. So with doctors, when I retire, there should be somebody to take my place. So teaching or training is an important aspect of our job, and you demonstrate that you will be doing it. If you have any skills like AI is becoming very prominent, especially with the NHS 10-year plan focusing on digital innovation, talk about that and align your values with the NHS Constitution. That would help you in wowing the panel. They will be very impressed. And the final tip that I have for you today is to prepare 2-3 concise points for each domain. Give an example and link them with different skills so you can use them when they ask you to give you specific examples. And learn different frameworks and practice using them, giving examples. And link each point back to the person's specification of the trust values as well as what skills you have that will make you shine, that links your skill to the trust, what's needed. And most important, whatever you do, you must practice loud so your answers sound natural and not rehearsed. It doesn't come across as someone you wrote the script, memorize it, because at some point in your interview, you will be giving questions or answer questions. At some point in your interview, you will be answering questions you haven't come across, or it's phrased differently. And if that happens, in that case, you are in a difficult problem because your answer was to that phrase, but you don't have the ability to make that adjustment to differently phrased questions. You do that when you have those skills. And I hope that I have been able to do some myth busting here. I have been able to give you some skills, and I hope to see you somewhere in my Career for Doctors seminars or plans. Please don't forget to drop in the comments if you need further information.